Hello, welcome to the Robots and Pencils Academy. I'm your host, Jonathan Rasmussen. iOS has built-in classes that help us connect to external services, but one really nice third-party library is called AFNetworking. In this episode, we're going to look at how to add AFNetworking to your project, how to set it up, and then how to use it to communicate with an external service. Now, I'm a big James Bond fan, so something I'd like to do is to be able to query the Twitter API with a parameter like Skyfall and view all the tweets coming back. So if you just go to your browser and drop that in there, you may not get something quite as pretty as this. I'm using a plugin for Chrome called JSON View. But what you will see is a whole bunch of JSON coming back at us as a result of hitting that external Twitter API and getting back a response. Now, what I would like to be able to do is to be able to use AFNetworking to query this service, go into the results section, then find all the places where the text is so I can view everyone's tweets and just see what people are saying about the movie. Let's take a look at how we do that. So the first thing we do is we go to the AFNetworking site on GitHub and download the library. You can download it many different ways. The easiest one is to probably hit the zip button. That will download it to your local directory. And then if you go ahead and open that up or take a look at it in your downloads directory, you should see basically the library in its expanded mode. It comes with an example, which is nice. What we really want to use is just the contents of this directory, AFNetworking here. But first, let's create a project, and then we'll add this to our project. So if you haven't already done so, fire up Xcode, and let's go File, New Project, or Shift Command N. We'll make it a single view application. We'll use storyboards. I'm going to call this AFNetworking Spike. And let's go ahead and save that wherever you like on your desktop. And the first thing we'll do is we'll use most of the defaults here, but first let's import that AFNetworking library. So go to your Finder and go to your Downloads directory or wherever you downloaded AFNetworking. Now in the expanded zip file, this is the actual library here in the AFNetworking directory. We don't need this example or any of these other files. So go ahead and highlight that directory, AFNetworking, and just drag that over to your project until you see that green plus sign. Let it go, and then make sure you select Copy Items into Destination Groups at the top. That's important. Go ahead and click Finish, and now we'll have the AFNetworking library in our project. Now the next thing I want to do, just to jazz this up a bit, is I have an image of the latest James Bond movie in my downloads directory called Skyfall. So I'm just going to take that image and I'm just going to drag that into my project also. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure I copy that in. And I just want to add that picture to my screen. Oh, here it added it to my AFNetworking library. That's not where I want it. I'm just going to move it up. So it's somewhere up here where I can see it. And then on the view controller that was given to me, I'm just going to come over to my media library here. And somewhere in there, I should see the Skyfall image. I'm just going to drag this out. And as you can see, it's rather big. So it's not going to perfectly fit my phone, but I'll just drag it around until I'm kind of happy with it. There, I'll get a good picture of Daniel Craig, maybe walking something like this. And then I'll just add a button to the UI. What I'm going to have happen is when someone clicks this button, this is when I'm going to go out and make our network call using the AFNetworking library. So I'm just going to add a button here called Transmit. And now I'm ready to set up that action. So I'm just going to make a little bit of room here. And I'm going to bring up my assistant editor, Option Command Return. Let's bring these guys together. And let's add an action here so that when someone hits or taps this button, I want to go transmit, which will basically just be our query to do our AFNetworking lookup. I don't really need to do this, but I'm just going to tighten it up and make that a UI button. And we'll go connect, and this is where we are going to do our networking, right in here. Okay, so let's take a look and see what that's going to look like. So the way we're going to start off shouldn't be anything too crazy here. Here we've got something called URL as string. This is basically where we're connecting. We're going to hit the Twitter API, and here's our parameter Skyfall. So when we hit that API, it's going to look for any tweets with the hashtag Skyfall and return those to us. That's our URL string. Then we create a formal URL object, and then an NS URL request. And now here's where the AFNetworking comes in. Now don't be alarmed if this looks a little strange at first. I need to do an import here because I'm using this AFNetworking JSON request operation. I just need to import that .h into my file here. What's going on here? Let me just see if I can format this a little bit better. The shortcut to slide things over is Command and then square bracket. So you can just slide things over like this if you want to format them a little bit better. So here we have an AF JSON request operation that takes our request that we created up here, our Twitter API, looking for hashtag Skyfall. And then in here, this is something that we may not have seen before. These are called blocks. And blocks are basically chunks of code that we can pass around like variables, and they will get called, in this case, asynchronously by the library that we're using. They're used a lot in iOS. They're very, very handy because what we can do is we can create an operation here, start it down here, and then basically pass in code that says, hey, if that operation succeeds, I want you to run this code. And if it fails, I want you to run this code. So it's a really elegant way of starting to pass around and add different behavior to methods by passing around chunks of code as if they were variables. We'll do a session on blocks later and we'll really get into them. But for now, I just want you to view these as this is some code that gets run if this network operation succeeds, and this is some code that runs if that network operation fails. That's all I need to worry about for blocks for now. Now I'm just going to open this up in another tab just so I can get the full view here, and so we can take a look at this code. Okay, so what's going on here? We're creating an AF JSON request operation, giving it a name operation, and we're passing in the request we created along with the chunks of code for success and the chunks of code that are going to be run if it fails. Now, all that's really happening here is when our succeed chunk of code, or when it works, gets called, we're getting a response and an object of JSON. And it's this JSON here which basically contains everything we need. It's the result of our operation. It's the result of our JSON parsed and being brought back to us in the form of a dictionary. So what we can do is we can look at that JSON object and ask it for things. For example, we can ask it for all the results and all the text within those results and return those to us as an array. These are going to be our tweets. We can then log those out here and take a look and see what they look like. So let's just run this and see what we get. Okay, so here comes our Bond app, and if we hit transmit, we can see that if we just print out all the tweets, we've gone in and parsed all the JSON, grabbed the text, and then printed it out. So these tweets here basically match what we had in our operation over here. If we go back to our search Twitter screen, here, if we take a look at how that was broken down, like how did I know to go and grab, where is it? How did we know to go and grab results.txt? This word results here corresponds with, let me see if I can just, with this results part of our JSON here, and the .text, whoops, don't need this. And the .text corresponds with each sub-element of the results. So if we go down here, here's a text. So results.txt will return this string here. Results.txt will also return this string here. Results.txt will go through each one of these, pull them out, and then ultimately print them out just like we're seeing here. So it's a really nice, elegant way, and it's used a lot in iOS because a lot of backend services are backed up by some sort of RESTful API, maybe built in Rails or .NET or Java or something. They'll return the results as JSON, and then quite often what we'll do is we'll just parse them. So here's the object where all our JSON comes back. It's a dictionary. We go in there and we pull out our results.txt, and then you can use them however you want after. So part of your work on your projects will be figuring out what this query needs to look like. So when you dive in there, you can pull out whatever information you want. So in this case, if we wanted more information from the Twitter, for example, who it was from, when it was created, or even the profile image ID of what they look like, this is all stuff we could grab and take a look at. Now, before we leave this, let's just take a look at a few more things. I just want to show you some other good pieces of information you can get from an AF networking request. I'm just going to set a breakpoint here, stop the app, and then run it again. And I just want to show you a few debugging techniques. So if we run this with that breakpoint there, the first thing that we can, and hit the transmit button, the first thing we can do is we can print out just the JSON response itself. So here's the JSON object that was passed in. If we just print that out, this will basically show us a breakdown in the dictionary of everything that came back in that response. So that's one thing that's very handy. The other thing that can sometimes be handy is if you want, we have this response object. We can take a look at all the field headers. If we just wanted to see what was coming back to us in our response, we could also print those out. And that might just make sure, it might tell us if things are encoded correctly. If there's specific headers we're looking in there for security or things like that, we can also check those out. So that's just by going response.all field headers. We can also print out the, let's see, PO response status code. This will tell us the status code coming back to us, whether it's an HTTP 200, 400. Unfortunately, this comes back to us as an NS integer in hex. So C8, I just happen to know, means 200. You can see our status code here was 200 OK. But you can also get that status code and do different things depending upon whether you get a 200 or 400. You can use that in your logic. And if you want to see what your actual response was coming back, what you need to do is just step out of the AF networking block until the operation variable becomes clear. So I'm just going to step one more time until the operation. So here it's printed things out. Now I just want to print out operation. And as you can see here, here's the AF networking operation request, and it's telling me things like, here's the request where it went. There's an actual response object in there. If I now print out the operation response string, response string, I can actually see the raw response coming back to me. And sometimes this is handy. You just want to see, you just may want to check, am I indeed getting back JSON, which in this case I can tell I am because I have all of these very simple bracket, colon, bracket data. Or if I wanted to verify I wasn't getting back XML, you can print out the raw response string also from the operation just to see what you're getting. So there you have it. AF networking, a very handy library for querying external services that return JSON, parsing them, and then taking that data and doing anything you want with it after. We could have taken those tweets and put them in a table. We could have used them for internally in our app, but it's a very handy library. We use it a lot at Robots and Pencils, and I hope you find it handy too. Great, thanks for coming out. Come back next week, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.